Hello, my name is John Tepley, and today I have the great pleasure to interview Allison McClay. And she is an artist in Portland, Oregon. She does amazing work. The painting she did last year for the Seventh Generation Project, there was this amazing sense of water and movement, and just how earth and man-made structures and all of that has its proportion. And you do murals, is that true?
I do, yeah.
And illustration and all kinds of interesting things when it comes to brush and pen. Thank you for being here.
Yeah.
So when you first started painting and you're looking at that blank piece of paper or canvas, what are some of your first thoughts?
Well, I think I've learned pretty quickly that in order to think clearly about it, it can't be white. I have to lay down some color, or it has to start as wood, which is one of the reasons I like your project, is it starts as wood. So that's easier for me to think about. But yeah, it's just, you have to have some kind of color or something already established before I can kind of think properly about what happens next.
So often the materials that you buy from an art store start out white.
Mm-hmm.
What kind of tone do you put down to begin? A warm, cool, something in between?
Yeah, I think that is less important to me, honestly, because I'll just build up from there. So I definitely know there are certain artists who always have to start with a specific color, and that's never been me. It just needs to be something. It could be just a gray or a brown tone, or it could be just like a really bright yellow or orange. I really don't care. It just gives me something to work with or work against. I think there's something about just a bright white that makes it's hard to focus.
Actually, I'm very similar in that. And to be quite frank, I've never understood why people like white canvases. You know, like, okay, so
Yeah,
I do
me neither.
so I do understand that they like the bright reflection coming up through the paint, but it just doesn't seem as interesting to work with.
I agree. Yeah, there's something about it that's just oppressive.
So tell me about your use of color. Like, how do you choose your colors?
Again, I think that's really intuitive. I've always been one of those people that tries not to process. I'm interested in color theory, and I've explored a lot of that, but it always just comes back to what feels right. And I feel like I do better when I don't think too much. I just kind of go for, okay, this needs to be red, or there's something. When I overthink the color, that's when it gets muddy and complicated.
Yeah. And how about like your brush strokes? How does that play into your work?
Those to me have never been as important. I don't know if it's because I work in acrylic and do lots of washes and glazes, or if often my work is finished digitally, but I've just never, it's always been less about the brush strokes themselves for me and more about just the shape and the color and the tone. So yeah, that's something that maybe I should spend more time thinking about than I do, but.
Oh, your work is amazing, and you're doing fine.
Thank you. I often have paintings that have like really like lots of buildup of color, and so it ends up being kind of a textured surface, and I never really mind that look, but I know it's it's not for everyone.
Yeah. Now, what has illustration? So you're trained as in graphic illustration, is that true?
Yeah, I went I went to college for illustration, and I do, I do some of that. And actually the painting that I did for you was partly based on an illustration job I have with Washington State Parks, where I do interpretive panels for them. And a lot of it has been focused on their North Head Lighthouse. So I've spent a lot of time there just kind of learning about the history of that place and doing, really, kind of dry illustrations for them. There's
Ah,
going to be.
but why don't you tell us about what you do with all this amazing things that you learn about the locations?
Yeah, it's been really fun to have another outlet for this. I've learned so much about the life and the history of some of these early lighthouse keepers. It's been really fun to get to take some of that information and take some of the initial artwork that I did that was turned into, a panel, and go kind of another direction with it once that's completed, and just kind of have fun and kind of let my imagination wander with what could happen in different kind of fantastical scenarios.
Well, they are quite fantastic. I'm thinking of one that I've seen of your work where it was a story about a woman house slave keeper. Could you tell me about the painting and how you came to develop it?
Yeah, so one of the first panels I did for Washington State Parks was it was depicting the life of the West Coast's first female lighthouse keeper. And it was kind of explaining what a day in her life would be. And I found her so fascinating. I just kind of kept, learning more and more about her. And then once that painting was finished, I wasn't done with her. So I had this, I'm actually working on a series of paintings. Some of them are still being made, but just, this kind of, basically it was a really, really lonely life. And so she probably, if she was sane, she probably had a strong inner inner life. She probably lived in her mind a lot. And so I've kind of create these fantastical kind of dreamscapes for her, or maybe they're kind of disaster scenarios as well. She was the only protector of her family. She was the lighthouse keeper because her husband died. And so I have these kind of I don't know how else to describe them other than fantastical scenarios in which she's the hero.
Yeah, no, they're very, very interesting work, and it's what you took out of the studies that you did for Washington, and how you applied that in a totally different creative way. The images themselves are very fascinating. I love those works. Now, when you're painting landscapes, what kinds of things do you think are important when you're looking at a landscape? And what kinds of things would you like to get right and paint or explore when you're working?
I mean, yeah, I think landscapes are just so tough because nothing compares to the real thing, and
True.
it's, I struggle with how I think about painting landscapes, because often my answer is just don't even bother. So for me, I guess I'm just trying to capture something that interests me, whether it's light or a specific, I don't know. This question is tough. I haven't figured it out for myself, I guess, is the answer.
Well,
Yeah.
what is your what kind of relation do you have to the land and landscape? I mean, when do
I
you?
mean, I think, sorry, I cut you off.
Oh, I was going to bring up things like intangibles like spirituality, uh, beauty, love. Do do those kinds of things have any role in your work?
Absolutely. I mean, I think that I feel a deep protectiveness and relationship with this specific local landscape, being born and raised here. And yeah, I mean, if it's the closest thing I have to a spirituality, you know, is just being near the ocean. And I think that's
I get
part
that.
of why it's so daunting. Yeah, right. And so that's part of why I think it's so daunting to put that into a static picture. Maybe if I was a film artist or something, it would be easier, but I feel like I'm never doing it justice. I feel like I'm always trying to aspire to what it is in person and never really succeeding.
You know, I totally get that disappointment.
Yeah, right. But
You
I
know,
also, at the same time, I can recognize beautiful works of art that depict landscapes. I can see them and notice that, but I don't think I've personally created one that I feel that way about.
you know, even paint actually, you know, like I've always felt, you know, like when you, if you work in oil, you know, there's a beautiful quality to oil painting. And
Mhm.
once you squeeze out, you know, like that dollop of oil paint on your palette, it's perfect. And then you squeeze out these other perfect dollops of color, and whatever you do with them, it's kind of downhill from there. You know,
Which is why we have artists who just leave it at that, right?
yeah. So, I mean, I think that's uh, a difficult thing to address, is like the, how I would frame it is the perfection and just the amazing awesomeness of what you're looking at, and how do you do something, you know, to, you know, it's like through painting, you know, are we trying to touch it? Are we trying to hold on to it? Why would we paint a landscape?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, what's your answer to that?
Well, I don't have a good answer. Well, my answer is, that we should all band together uh, and explore this intangible and amazing and perfect universe that we live in, and somehow try to make it better, and work together as artists, and create a 2 foot by 1 mile mural. So there's my answer.
You're right. That's actually the, you know, just getting that so many perspectives is probably the perfect answer to not being able to depict it with just one image, is just getting as many contributors as possible to show how they see it, because that gets closer to the
Well,
real thing.
the one of the beginnings of the project was actually doing plein air paintings and being out there and loving painting. You know, it's just the experience, and though it is frustrating in the way that we talk about, but the other frustration was, as I was painting these areas that, you know, I had such strong feelings for, you know, everything was in peril. You know, and my
Yeah.
painting just didn't seem to do enough to help the cause. But,
Yeah.
you know, so we all band together and become a group. Um, does art, is art a vehicle for persuasion, you know, for things?
I mean, yeah, to most of us, I think it's all we have, right? Yeah, I mean, art in, yeah, absolutely.
Mhm. Well, we're winding down here. Is there anything that you would like to talk about, that I haven't touched on?
I don't know. I mean, I think that we just hit on it, and that I feel like I'm just beginning to explore how I can use this medium to its fullest. And I think you're just being part of your project is a good way forward for figuring all that out. And I hope this project just continues to kind of grow, and I'm really excited to see how that goes and the direction that takes.
Well, Allison, thank you so much for the interview, and it's been a pleasure talking to you. And you can see Allison's work at we'll be exhibiting this July in Lincoln City Cultural Center, and you could come by and see it. Bye for now, Allison, and we'll talk soon.
Thanks so much.